Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Why did I say no to the Morrigan? Well, Dagda agus fáilte. Hi, hello and welcome. It's Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School here. And to answer this question, I got to share a little bit more about my own personal backstory and my own personal beliefs and experiences as I grew to identify as an Irish pagan. Now, I did a full video in much more detail of the story of it all, which you can find below. I'll include a link to it called How I Met the Morrigan. But to summarize, really, at a very difficult time in my life, I felt a spiritual call when I began to explore that feeling on me, which was new to me, very new to me. I identified that it was coming from the Morrigan. I then did nothing about it because I was very reticent and very hesitant to engage or to pursue that avenue of my spirituality. And then it became a pressing matter that needed to be addressed, leading to a cross-country pilgrimage to the Cave of the Cats and a travel down into the deep, dark, fit abode of the Morrigan. And there I had my direct face-to-face experience with her, where, in essence, she offered me a job. And I said no. And then she kind of re-explained the offer as if I were an infant, like with crayon, and all you have to do is tell me how I can fulfill the needs of your life, and then you will work for me. And then I said no. So at that point, the spiritual consultation ended rather abruptly, and I climbed my way out of the Cave of the Cats back into our world of sunlight and fresh air. And I have never been back in the Cave of Cats since. I've been back to the Cave of Cats many times, leading and assisting my partner Laura O'Brien on tours to the Rathscrán complex, but I have not gone in. So I have been into the Cave of the Cats once. I have been right the way down to the bottom in the darkness. I did not use any lights, so I have never seen the inside of the Cave of the Cats. It was a complete visual blank because we were in pitch darkness. Once you go into the man-made souterrain and take a left turn deep down, if you're not carrying any kind of torch, you won't adjust to that light. You won't adjust to that darkness. Or it will take a very long time to do so, and you'd have to turn and try and look back up and see your way out. But yeah, I journeyed, I followed the spiritual call on me. I addressed that as best I could in the moment, and I said no to the Morrigan. Now, surprisingly, when I say that to some people, certain people, they get very concerned about my well-being, about my safety. And I've had people kind of take that shuffling step away because they're afraid that the Morrigan's going to come for me one of these days and they don't want to be anywhere near me when she does. But that's not a concern for me. That is not the nature of my relationship with the Morrigan. And it does come down to, I didn't just say no, but I respectfully declined. And I realize I'm steering into the how I said no. And I think I need to probably address that a little bit to make sure it's clear to explain the why at the end of it. So, followed the spiritual calling, did the self-work as best I could, went on the pilgrimage, arrived in the Cave of the Cats, presented myself as requested to this goddess of battle, poetry, prophecy, and change and transformation. And at that time in my life, like now, here I am years later looking back at it, it was a very tumultuous time for my life. I was going through significant changes, not just in my societal structure of like I was no longer employed, no longer housed, had to rebuild relationships with families and friends. There was a lot of transformation happening at that time, but also when I had been estranged from everyone and when that relationship, the toxic relationship ended, thankfully, the best thing she ever did was leave me, to be honest. I The word I could probably put on it was an enforced hermitage. I was in enforced hermitage because I had been disconnected from everything. I only had the job that allowed me to keep the roof over my head, but even that was beginning to decline quickly with the declining mental health that I had going on at that time. It was just me and my dog, and Russell saved my life. Honestly, if not for him and his companionship through all those years, I would not have been fit. Like, I'd come home from work absolutely drained, completely depressed, but he'd still need to go for a walk. And my walking place at that point was the Hill of Tara. And so, unbeknownst to me, again, didn't realize this until looking back through the lens of experience and growth and spiritual growth. I was on pilgrimage to the Hill of Tara long before I was on pilgrimage to the Cave of the Cats. Every day I was taking the hound and we were running up and down those mounds. And that I think began some form of stirring without me realizing it, of connection to the landscape, which meant that when we rolled the clock forward to this come hither from the Morrigan, it wasn't out of nowhere, it wasn't out of the blue, it was because I had been inadvertently turning up at a central place of spiritual connection to Ireland, to ancient Ireland, for a long, consistent, repeated period of time. And even though I wasn't seeking, I wasn't looking, I wasn't pursuing openly, obviously some part of my transformation may have resonated with her and my changing times, which is why she's like, well, I'm the goddess of change. I can help with all of this. And so I went down into the darkness when I was called. It was say the right words, like as in say what you need, speak your need. So it can be met and fulfilled. And then I would pay and serve and work for her as part of an agreement to that. The words I actually said were words of just wind. They mean nothing. They have no use. And again, when she explained to me what in crayon to a toddler, no, I will help your life be better. I responded and said, I have no need of your assistance. If I need it, I'll find it on my own. And the lesson I took from that personally was about sovereignty. And I talk about it in the other video. The idea of personal responsibility and personal empowerment in that aspect of sovereignty. I don't often, I have had the privilege of guiding many people on their spiritual journeys. I've had the honor of teaching people and sharing information and having conversations on a tour bus or outside a venue where someone is going through some sort of spiritual moment and then I just happen to be there. Or they walk out of a temple dedicated to the Morrigan and find me arrived with, a bit of Dagda perspective for their life. I have been in those moments, and I can only say that I would not be where I am if not for having done the work and exploring my connection to God's guides and guardians. True, but also taking responsibility for the power that is inherent within me, the power of my responsibility for intellect, knowledge, education, learning, and then the ability I have to speak and to transfer information and thought and perception by articulation, by communication, by talking people through stuff, offering them opportunities to see it from a different point of view, and then allow them to grow in their own way. Now, again, this lens looking back, and I apologize if this seems very rambly, it is about trying to answer the question of like, why? Why would I say no to the Morrigan? Well, why would she want me? It's kind of where things were at that time. Some part of me was like, no, there's nothing that you can give that I can't get on my own, and that I should pursue on my own. I need to either get a new job, sort out my circumstances, figure out my mental and emotional well-being. And I accepted the burden of responsibility and the empowerment within that of doing that for myself, not reaching out for help. Now, stubborn, yes. Not the healthiest, yes. I did go and get mental health treatment. I did get and do still take my antidepressants. So it's not like I was like, no, I don't fucking need you. I'll do it on my own. That's not what I'm saying. I approached that moment respectfully and I was like, no, I need to do this on my own. Now,
let me just interrupt this episode briefly to say, look, I know this can feel overwhelming. You're hearing to learn the myths, go slowly, build a foundation, and you're thinking, all right, but what do I actually do tomorrow morning? That's why we put together a free guide called Irish Pagan Practice for Everyday Life. It's not a course, it's not trying to sell you anything, it's just simple, grounded practices you can start with that are designed for real life, not Instagram or TikTok. So you can grab your copy at irishpagan.school/practice. Links in the description below. All right, let's get on with the episode.
Whether or not it would have been easier with the Morrigan's help, it probably would have been easier with the Morrigan's help. I'll be honest, she's a fucking goddess who manages to break away all of the boundaries, borders, or bullshit that would actually kind of inhibit us and allow us to just smoothly sail on. But again, I'm the kind of person who does it their own way, truculent and stubborn. No, this is the way I'm going to climb the mountain. You do know there's a pathway over here. And it's like, yeah, but there's more trees that way, and that's the way I'm going. Now, I have been referred to as Mr. Stompy sometimes, where everyone's like, no, energetically we need to go with the flow. And I'm like, or I can just go this way because this is the way it fits for me. Now, I don't do it disrespectfully. I don't do it without honor or without embracing the consequences if I do overstep something. But that's why I'm able to educate people and say, do it this way. Don't make the mistakes that I make or have made in the past. So yeah, the why was really down to a sense of personal responsibility and a need to do it for myself instead of, and it was coming out of this almost enforced hermitage where I had no one to rely on. I had no one who I could trust. And so I'd been built up all of this self-reliance and self-dependence and independence. So I was like, no, I got to figure this out for myself. From there, I put the work in, put the effort in on me, but it turns out my spiritual journey around the Morrigan was not complete because my relationship with my tour guide started at that point, or my good friend from before, Laura, who is a priest of the Morrigan. And it was a good year more later that we've been in a relationship, finding and exploring our connection, where out of nowhere, in the bed of the couple of a Saturday morning, we're lying there, being beside each other, I think reading books or whatever it was, and then Laura just goes, fine, the Dagda, I've said it. Now I'm done, I'm doing no more. Which caused me to, what the hell was that? But when the name the Dagda was said, I then suddenly had a name or an identity that I could put on another hovering, very patient divinity that I had perceived personally before. And it seems that my intentional, stubborn obliviousness and being aware of, but not seeking and not choosing to seek or choosing to see, led the Dagda to bother the Morrigan into bothering the Morrigan priest into saying his name out loud in my presence. Now, from there, I began to explore the lore and the Dagda. I began to build an understanding of Ireland's ancient god of druidry. Now, again, I'm talking about the Morrigan. Why am I talking about the Dagda? Well, he's her mate, her partner, her fit, equal in many ways. But it is to him that I eventually came in service, in offering my name, my energy, my effort in care and support of his name and his work, and educating people about him to save the life of someone I care for a lot. And that's the why I do that with him. That's the why I do that for my family, my close family that I care for. And they've grown a lot. Like, they've hit their quarter century this year, which I'm so totally delighted about. And whether or not some part of my faith or belief or care has had that impact, I can't say for sure. I believe that it has. But it is about him and me doing the work to encourage more people to consider the Dagda in their life, to consider healthy masculinity, to consider a deity who is about abundance and care and compassion and emotional intelligence as much as he's about physicality, presence, and justice and kingship. So I'm getting off onto a Dagda tangent, so I need to bring it back to Morrigan content. Otherwise, the algorithm will give out to me for like, oh, why are you talking about the Dagda? You can't really talk about, okay, you can talk about the Morrigan and the Dagda very independently because they are very much independent deities, but they do cross over. So, my personal belief after the fact, looking back on everything in regards to how I have developed in my connection with the Dagda, is that some part of me was always meant to be a Dagda person. Some part of my calling or my makeup or construction was designed to be a storyteller, was designed to be a bard, was designed to have enough plus points in charisma and enough points in intellect and memory to remember these things and tell those stories in such a way that it is engaging and entertaining so that people can build and find their connections to their spirituality through the stories that we have always been has always been the way we have transferred knowledge from generation to generation. Before the existence of the written word, we had stories and we told the stories. Now, how does this link back to the Morrigan? I am of the personal opinion, that goddess of prophecy, she sees the probability and potentiality of everything, which is why she moves the pieces around the board in the way that she needs to optimize the right form of transition and change that needs to happen in line with her will. Like magic, straight up. And some part of me wonders what she like, if I nudge this piece this way, will it sign up as a Morrigan bard instead of a Dagda bard? Um, Whether or not he specifically built me to be Dagda bard before I was born or not, I don't know. But the idea that the Morrigan will be like, yeah, I could totally recruit that piece and then it's gonna work for me, not for him. Not that they would be adversarial or have animosity, but you know, usefulness, I suppose. I have a skill set that is of use to deities. And maybe some part of the Morrigan's attempt to communicate with me or to recruit me was about utilizing those skills and talents that I inherently have as me. Now, again, I can't say for sure because it comes down to, and this is why I said it at the start, it is personal. This is my personal narrative, my personal story. And I'm answering this question because I get asked why. Why would you say no to the Morrigan? Like, she's a badass, brilliant fucking goddess. Why would you say no to the Morrigan? And for me, I chose a harder way. I chose to do it myself. I chose to take on board the burden and the struggle because it was part of my nature, part of my upbringing. But in choosing that, in some way, maybe I was preparing myself to be a better or more resilient individual when it came later down the line and another deity came knocking at my door. I don't know for sure. Now, the way I said no to the Morgan was with respect. I wasn't like, fuck you, peace out, whatever. I was like, no, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to do it my way. And again, the visitation ended rather abruptly, as I said, in the cave. Suddenly my experience of her was there, and then she was gone. I said no. She was like, you don't understand. She double explained it as if in crayon to a toddler. I still said no, and then she was gone. That was it. Visitation over. You're obviously not ready or an idiot. I think she thought I was an idiot at that point. Um, Maybe still does. I don't know. But I speak fondly of the Morrigan. When I returned from the cave, I I prayed to her as I came out of the other world, back into our world, out of the darkness, back into the light. And I was like, listen, I appreciate the offer. I appreciate the conversation. You ought to come hither. You put the call on me to turn up, and I have turned up. I have fulfilled my obligation to you, but I have no other obligation to you. And so I told her then that she has my love, she has my respect. I think she's fucking hilarious. I think she's an amazing goddess, and anyone who needs the Morrigan in their life should consider like looking and exploring a relationship with her, because she is so powerful and so fantastic and so amazing and so funny. Everyone's like, she's a super dark goddess, super serious, so super dangerous and scary. Get beyond the narrative, get beyond, like, get closer to the stories, understand who she is as a deity, and know her for who she is. And she really is an absolutely amazing, fantastically passionate and really, really funny deity. Now, I will say that I'm maybe a little bit biased. I may have Dagda tinted glasses when it comes to the Morrigan. Um, so I'm not going to say that I don't have some bleed over of his affection for her, because the closer I've got to know him, I know her. I knew her before I knew him, but I've gotten to know more of her through knowing him. In the same way that, you talk to a friend and they talk about their partner. You've never met the partner, but you get an insight or an understanding of who the partner is because you know what your friend is saying about them. That's kind of how it is with me and the Morgan. Now, yeah, why did I say no? I wasn't ready. Honest self-assessment, I was not ready. And though it might have been a path that I could have chosen and could have worked with and could have worked for me, absolutely. But I knew for myself that I had my own journey to take to grow and to overcome my challenges that were there at the time. And so that for me was the fulfillment of this personal sovereignty, this intent and intentionality around being the best and fullest version of me, not for family, not for friends, not for a partner, not for a god, not for an ancestor, but for me. The best Jon that Jon can be. Not because I have to, not because I need to fulfill a role in society or a job or a school or a family, anything like that at all. Because I wanted to, because I wanted to be the best Jon for me. And that changed. The idea of what was the best Jon has grown and evolved and will, God's willing, continue to grow and evolve as I continue to choose to pursue the idea of the best version Jon can be for Jon. What has happened since working with the Dagda is that I now have a bit more support, I have more guidance, and my understanding and my alignment of what is the best Jon or best version of Jon links with a lot with his characters and how he presents himself in our stories and in our mythology. So my alignment and my choice is to work with the Dagda towards these processes. So why did I say no to the Morgan? I wasn't ready. Is she annoyed at me? I don't think so. I think I think she's quite fond of me, and she turns up in many of the stories that I actually write. Um, but also I'm a little bit, playfully irreverent at times, not rude, not like, not disrespectful, but playful irreverence, I suppose. And I think I get away with it. I literally have Morrigan people step away from me when I'm being a little bit irreverent, afraid that, they might be struck down by accident when the Morrigan finally comes to smite me. If she gotta come, that's fine. I'm sure she'll have a conversation with the boss I work for first. And if both of them decide that it's my time to go, it's my time to go. But I don't think that's going to happen. Hopefully, God's willing, I will end up an elfla with a silver beard, silver hair, still telling stories about the amazing ancient Irish gods and how they inform my life all of the time, continually, every single day. If you'd like to know more about the ancient Irish gods, all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/free. We have over years worth of free resources there, or go to irishpagan.com and actually take a class, dive in, go deeper. I've classes on the Dagda there. We also have Morrigan.academy. You can find dedicated Morrigan content there if you're looking for it. So I would recommend the 5-day challenge at the Morrigan Academy. That's a great way to just dive in and start building a connection to the goddess by exploring a part of her lore each for 5 days. So it's literally, you make the time each day to go through, read an email that you'll receive from us, and then contemplate or meditate or journey based on that thought of connection towards the goddess. With that, I will say thank you very, very much. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.